And my next guest, Mark Mix, president of the National Right to Work Committee, 2.8 million member public policy organization, the National Right to Work Defense Foundation. Mark, this is a problem. Chevron workers in California say they're ready to go on strike. Well, I mean, we've got the energy failures in policy, right? And,
Steve,
and it just seems to get worse.
Yeah, well, when you reduce supply, you get an increased cost. And that's really basic economics 101. And that's what's happening in the energy sector in the country and frankly, in the world. But have no fear, Joe Biden's in Europe today discussing energy policy. He won't discuss it here in the United States. In fact, he shuts it down in the United States, Keystone XL pipeline, oil and gas exploration on federal land, making us dependent on foreign energy sources once again. And then on top of all that, we have organized labor officials calling workers out on strike at a refinery in Richmond, California, where the United Steelworkers have put 500 refinery workers out on the picket line. And that is a refinery that supplies about 250,000 barrels of gasoline and diesel fuel every day from that refinery. So we're going to get another kind of reduction in supply. We've got problems in Europe with the Caspian pipeline that supplies 1.2% of global demand across the world because of the unrest in Europe. That's probably not the right way to describe it, but suffice to say, when you're talking energy policy and you have an administration that wants to go to Venezuela and Saudi Arabia and Iran and beg for increased production, when America was energy independent just about 2 years ago and exporting energy resources and to the rest of the world, you wonder what in the world the administration is thinking and what union officials are thinking when they're trying to reduce by hurting their own workers.
Anyone who thinks that windmills and solar panels are going to run this country, I'm sorry, they're out to lunch. I don't mind the mix. But I think it's all show and no go, as we used to say about cars when I was growing up, right? It's got a flashy paint job, looks great, but under the hood, there's nothing. All show, no go, right? And that's what windmills and solar panels are when it comes to powering this nation of ours. America has to have vast quantities of cheap energy to run and to run well, and short of that, we will be on our knees. And maybe that's the plan here. Destroy the American economy. You couldn't beat us militarily, you couldn't beat us politically, but if you can destroy us financially, maybe that's the play. I mean, what else am I to think? Because they can't possibly be this stupid, can they?
No, Steve, it almost looks like it's, coordinated and planned and putting us, in the so-called globalist community when, in fact, the United States has always been strong and always been independent and been a leader in issues like this. And frankly, you have to shake your head trying to understand what the policy is. And then, when you think about it from a union perspective, you think about these union officials, the big labor bosses here in Washington, D.C., that have endorsed this president that's putting their rank and file workers on the unemployment line. It doesn't make any sense. Many of these workers are paying dues and paying political contributions into their union PACs that support a president that's basically putting the country in jeopardy and certainly putting energy policy and our energy resources in jeopardy. No question about that.
Right. So what do we do to turn this around? I mean, obviously, there's an election coming in November. A lot of folks think that's too late. Because we're putting in these 2,700-page bills and these 3,000-page bills, there's all sorts of stuff being stuffed into there. Rules, regulations, limitations that are being signed into law. And the only way to turn these things back around is to get them back through the House, back through the Senate, and then signed by the president, who won't do it for a Republican-controlled House or Senate. I mean, we're in dire straits here for a while.
Yeah, Steve, obviously the generation before us and the generation before that thought the same thing about America. And the one thing we know about Americans, when they get energized and they pay attention, they will hold politicians accountable. And that's really the only response we have to this experiment in self-government. We've got to inform the American people about what is happening and what these policies do to them. But you're right. I mean, I get cynical every now and then, Steve, as well. And it's really difficult. But what we can do and what we have to do is pay attention. And we have to hold these politicians accountable for what they're doing in Washington. They want us to sit back and not pay attention and entertain us with bread and circuses, if you will, and obviously distract us from what's happening here by all these other foreign adventures that are occurring. And so it's a difficult time. But We do get a chance every 2 years to basically say and have our voice heard. We can do that come November. And it may not be early enough, Steve, but it's certainly going to come. And there's an opportunity there for Americans to stand up and be counted, specifically on those 2,700-page bills. I mean, you ask us what our solution is at Right to Work. We've got a one-page bill, literally a one-page bill that takes away the union official's ability to have a worker fired for failure to tender dues or fees. 27 states have right to work laws across the country. The other 23 are bound by federal policy that imposes forced unionism in the workplace. If we can get this bill passed, I mean, obviously it's going to be a long haul. We'll get it passed someday. But right now, we want to be able to hold politicians accountable, those that are for freedom in the workplace and those are for coercion. That's one step that we can take here at Right to Work.
Well, it's one step. But the next time you're here, I want to talk about the America Competes Act and the new W visas for entrepreneurs, critical employees, their families. Okay, let's destroy the American entrepreneur next by inviting in all these people from all over the world to start their businesses and compete against Americans directly. That's the stuff that's got to stop, that gets snuck into these bills. I've got it in my hand. It's huge. It's dangerous. Mark, I got to leave it there. We'll talk soon.
All right, Steve. Thanks.
Mark Mix, president of the National Right to Work Committee.